Hi, I'm Kimberly. Welcome back. So today I want to talk about, a couple of different things that I've been doing over the last couple of months. So I've been going to some trainings in Delaware that have involved some elements that, kind of have a natural inherent risk to them that kind of make some people question why I would do these things. And I've been asked that question a couple of times. Why would anyone want to blank, right? And as I've thought about this, and I've had different people ask me that, and I've responded, I'm going to talk a little bit about today why anyone would want to do these things and why I've done them, and why I think everyone should do these things. What it will add to your life, what it will add to a company, what it will add to your parenting, what it will, all these different things that you can apply it in. So what I've been doing is in August, I went to a training where I learned to do a whole bunch of different elements that I could then use in my own events, my own trainings, my own seminars, whatever. And I could use those to help other people. But I decided I wanted to take it a little bit further. And so I went back and I'm now going through a program where I can, when I get done with it, I'll be able to train people to be able to use these in their events instead of just using them myself. I'm really excited for this because I've seen, the breakthroughs that people have, and I look forward to seeing, more breakthroughs for more people. And so I'm going to talk about a few of those things today and what they've meant to me. So the first one that I want to talk about is the board break and the brick break. So these are kind of similar elements, and that's why I'm going to talk about them together. Because they have similar principles behind them, but yet they're a little bit different. So I had nothing to do with martial arts before I found this and started going to these trainings, and I'd never done anything like this before in my life. And so I was naturally a little hesitant and a little worried about it. So I watched other people. I did not volunteer to go first. I actually watched some other people do it first, and I saw them break through the board like it was no big deal. And so I walked up there with confidence and I smashed through that board going as hard as I could. And I broke it. And as a result, I felt really great and empowered when I got done, right? And then later on that week, we got to the brick break. And in my brain, so the board break is a 1-inch pine, but the brick break is a 2-inch cinder block cap. And there was a huge difference between those two things in my brain, right? One is significantly thicker and just significantly stronger. It's firmer, it's held together better, right? And so I naturally had this limiting belief and mindset that, this could be bad. And then I knew that there were people who had actually broken their hand before when they'd done something like this. And so that automatically made me even more nervous about it. I've heard of people slamming their fists into walls and, it never ends well, right? It always ends in a trip to the hospital. So in my mind, I'm looking at that brick and I'm thinking, no way, I don't want to bust my hand today. And it showed. When I stood up, I didn't give it my all. Not even at all. I did stand up and attempt to do it, and I did throw my fist down into it. Well, not really my fist, my hand. The palm of my hand is what we use. And so I threw that down into it, but I didn't really give it my all. And so when I hit the brick, my hand stopped immediately, right? It was painful. And because I didn't go through it. Now, if I'd have gone through it, it wouldn't have hurt. But as a result, I had, a little bit of pain associated. I didn't break anything, but I also didn't hit it hard enough to even come close to breaking anything. And so, that bothered me. For 3 months, I had to sit on that. For 3 months, I had to think about the fact that I failed and I didn't give it my all. I didn't give it my best. I guess that's what bothered me. It wasn't the fact that I hadn't gone through it. It was the fact that I knew I hadn't done my best. You see, all week, we'd been being trained to anchor certain things. And anchoring is just where you use either a certain movement or a certain word that when you do it, it stimulates things in your brain that then cause you to respond a certain way and give you kind of strength and power, to move forward. And so all week I'd been practicing doing 1, 2, yes! Right? And then I'd do whatever it was I had to do. And I did that when I busted through the board. I just 1, 2, yes, and slammed my hand down and went through it. But when I stood up to do the brick, I didn't do that. Instead, I stood up and I said, 1, 2, 3. And when I got done, like that was my first comment out of my mouth. I said, I didn't say yes. I know why I didn't say yes, because my subconscious mind did not believe that I could break that brick. And so it wasn't going to say yes and alert my body to be prepared to throw everything it had into it, because I didn't believe I could. You see, most of our problems in life have nothing to do with our physical body. They actually have to do with our mindset. And a lot of people think that, they couldn't do something because their body won't let them. They're not strong enough. They're, not in shape enough, whatever it may be. But most of the time, it has nothing to do with our physical bodies. It only has to do with our mind. Our mind controls our physical bodies. And if our mind does not believe that we are capable of doing something, our mind will not do it. Our mind is really good at protecting us physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And it will do anything it can to protect us. It is a natural human characteristic to want to be protected. And our minds are really good at making sure that we are protected and safe. And so, because my mind didn't believe it, it went into protection mode instead of action mode. And I wasn't able to do it. And just to illustrate this point a little bit further, it's like with the mile run. People used to try to beat the 4-minute mile and they couldn't. And runner after runner tried, and people tried for all these years, and they finally determined that it just physically, our bodies couldn't handle the 4-minute run. And we couldn't do it. And then one day, someone broke that barrier and they did it just barely under. And since then, people, like thousands and thousands of people, have broken the 4-minute mile. And they just keep breaking the record over and over and over again. Okay, and so it was never about the physical body. We don't somehow have stronger physical bodies today than they did, 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, or 40 years ago, or 100 years ago, or 500 years ago. It didn't matter. Our physical bodies are basically the same. We have the basic same genetic makeup, capabilities. They've always been able to do a 4-minute mile, or to do less than a 4-minute mile. The only thing that was stopping anyone for centuries from doing a 4-minute mile was the fact that they didn't think they could. Their body had nothing to do with it. It was completely 100% right here in the mind. Now, if that doesn't make you kind of think a little bit about your own life, just think about it. How many times have you convinced yourself that you just can't do something because, it's too hard, or you're just not strong enough to do it? It's probably a bunch of baloney. That's pure and simple. It's probably you don't believe that you can in your mind, so you don't do it. So the brick and board break have something interesting about them. A principle that I think is really important. So when you go to break it, we're taught not to focus on the board or the brick. We're told to focus 3 or 4 inches below the board or brick. Do you know why? Because when you get close to something, especially something that could cause pain or be, a little bit risky, our minds naturally want to stop, right? And so what happens? Then we hit the board not with our full force. But if you convince your mind that it's 3 inches under that, and you're focusing 3 inches below where you want to hit, or 3 inches beyond it, depending on how you're hitting it, then when you go to slam down into it, you're still going at a full force when you hit it, because your mind is thinking 3 inches below is when it's going to stop, and that's when it stops. And meanwhile, you go busting through that. And the life lesson that I learned that comes from this is that sometimes we need to focus beyond the obstacles that are in front of us. We all have obstacles daily that we put in front of us for different things. Excuses that we'll make for why we didn't accomplish it that day probably have to do with some sort of obstacle that got put in our path. But those obstacles don't have to hinder us in any way at all. As a matter of fact, most of them are meant to make us stronger, meant to make us better people. And so we should use those obstacles, and we should bust through them and go right and continue, right? And the way to do that is to focus on something beyond the obstacle, something else that is more important than that obstacle. It's kind of keeping that bigger perspective in life. It's not focusing here on this moment. Rather, it's focusing on something bigger. And if you can do that, there's no obstacle that will get the better of you. But if you stop and you stay focused on the obstacle, then you're going to have some problems. See, life isn't based on the circumstances of our life. Circumstances affect everyone. And multiple people have similar circumstances, and yet some, have great lives and others have very mediocre lives in every way possible, in their relationships, in their jobs, with their kids. It doesn't matter. Everything is mediocre, and other people have great lives, and they can have very, very similar experiences. Now, no two lives are going to be exactly the same. And so, we're not going to have the exact same experiences as someone else. And so, we can't compare them 100%. But there are very similar things. That has nothing to do. That has to do with what you focus on. Do you focus on the obstacle? Or do you focus on beyond the obstacle? Do you focus on the bigger picture? What it is that you want to accomplish? Do you allow your mind to determine what you can and cannot do? Or do you shatter those limiting beliefs? That's what makes all the difference. So I want to go back to my story. So this last week, I got to go back. And I knew that brick break was coming. And it's on the very last day. And so I have all week to think about the brick break, right? And in the meantime, I did the board break again. And I did the other elements. And life is good. But there's that in the back of my brain. I'm still thinking, can I really break through the brick? And there was still the element of what if I bust my hand, right? So that was still there, a little bit of fear, a little bit of trepidation there. Well, the day of the brick break came, and we practiced and we did our thing, and we did our power move, and mine's like yes, right? And then we walk up and we're supposed to do it, and so all week again I've been practicing my 1, 2, yes, and I've been practicing my form. And so I walk up to that brick, and it's my turn. And I set it down on the thing, and I do my power move, and then I step up to it. And I do my 1, 2, and I did. I gave it everything I had this time. And I went through it all the way. And I just stood there for a second because it took me a second to register that I had really done it, because I had such a limiting belief that I could, that I didn't know what to do. When I saw it there, and then I started jumping up and down in the air, and I was so excited because I had done something that honestly in my brain wasn't even possible. And the thing is though, when I stepped up to it that day, I did believe it was possible. I said my yes when I got ready, and I threw myself into that. And I didn't care at that moment if I broke my hand. I'd heard them say that if you go through it, you're not going to break your hand. It's the people who don't go through it that break their hands, right? So I either needed to give it everything or not give it anything at all, right? Which is what I did in August. I didn't give it anything at all because I was afraid to break my hand. This time I did the opposite. I gave it everything and I didn't break my hand. And I crushed that brick, that 2-inch cinder block cap, solid, firm. And I crushed it. I crushed the obstacle. I was no longer a slave to that limited belief, whatever it was that held me back, that I wasn't enough. And that was my thing. I look at myself and I think, well, I am not strong enough to break a cinder block cap. That's like if I had more muscle, right? That's what I kept thinking in my brain. If I had more muscle, I could do this. Or if I was a bigger person, or maybe if my bones were stronger, or, all these different things that ran through my mind. If I had more padding around my bones so that it wasn't my bone hitting it, this was my fear. That wasn't it at all, though. It was my mind. My physical body had nothing to do with whether or not I could break that. It was all in my thinking, and I crushed it. And can I tell you how amazing I felt? See, that's the thing I like about these kinds of seminars and these kinds of trainings, is that it's really nice to go to a seminar and have them tell you, you can do it, you can go home and you can get your dreams and you can make those phone calls and you can, go out there and do those things that are hard and sign up for that interview and apply for that job. And I hear that, and that's great. But the problem is, at the end of the day, 3 days later, when I have to do it, no one's there to say, hey, you can do it. And then, I can go back and read my notes and I can try to conjure up those same feelings, but it's a little bit different. But when you spend all week doing things you didn't think you could do and acting and watching as you bust through all those barriers, it leaves an indelible impression on the mind, one that is not easily forgotten, one that sticks with you. And so when you go back home and you think to yourself, now I have to make that call. and it seems a little bit hard. And then all of a sudden, what comes flying back to you is not just the words of someone that you can do it, but the words of your mind that says, you've already done this. You've already done something that was hard. You've already broken through these barriers. You've already conquered fear. This is nothing. This is nothing compared to walking on fire, or this is nothing compared to breaking through that brick, or this is nothing compared to bending rebar. And then you find that courage. You use those power moves, those anchoring things that you've been using all week. You use them and you act. I found that by being in a state of action all week with high adrenaline a lot of times, right? Because I was scared to death. But by being in a state of action, I went home and just continued to act and act and act. And I started setting up things. I did things I wouldn't normally do. I accomplished more in a couple of weeks' time than I normally would because I was already in a state of action. Just sitting at a seminar and listening to someone tell you nice things does not put you in a state of action. Your mindset is not there, which means you need to put yourself in that state. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later about the state of mind thing, because it is possible. You can go to things and you can be long time separated from anyone telling you can do something, and you can still put yourself into a state of action. But I found these to be really powerful, to go to things that cause you to act, that cause you to step outside your comfort zone and to bust through those limited beliefs, those barriers that are holding you back. Don't let anything hold you back. It's not worth it. The other thing that was interesting to me this time is the person who was doing the training focused a little bit on how we only have one opportunity. Because when we do the brick break, it's the only event, the only element that he doesn't allow you to have 3 opportunities to accomplish. All other ones, you can not accomplish it the first time and he'll let you try again and again. But the brick is the one that you get one chance. And he emphasized the fact that we had one opportunity. And sometimes in life, that's it. We only get one opportunity. Sometimes opportunities come around again and we get second chances and we talk about them. Those are nice. But sometimes something really is a once-in-a-lifetime chance. And if we're not careful, we'll miss those once-in-a-lifetime chances. We gotta take what's given to us today. Carpe diem, seize the day, seize the moment, seize the opportunity, seize the second. Because some things are gone and you don't ever get them back. You don't get a second chance. We like to think of it, but sometimes there really aren't second chances. Sometimes it's too late. Things are done. They're over. Someone dies. We don't get another opportunity. So that was something else that I learned that was heavily reinforced this time. The importance of taking the opportunities that are put in front of you. They are there for a reason, and you should take them. Be very careful about what you give up in life. Now, and there may be opportunities. We can't take every opportunity that's presented before us. Some of them we may not like. We may not want them. That's okay. But don't ever allow yourself to refuse an opportunity simply because you're afraid or because you think you can't do it. It's the worst reason. It brings regret with it. Years later when you think back and wish you had taken that opportunity. So the next element that I want to talk about is the arrow break. And it kind of goes with the rebar bending as well. So I'm going to kind of talk about the two of them. They're a little bit different, but they're kind of similar in nature. So both of these events have to do with, putting something right here, right above your collarbone in that really tender spot of your neck that kind of dips in a little bit. You put something there, and then for the arrow, you put the arrow up against the wall, and then you're going to walk right into it and bust that arrow. And it brings a little bit of discomfort, right? Like just pushing on that. If you push in on it, it brings a little discomfort. And so it's something you feel immediately, which is why I love this one so much, because it brings immediate discomfort. In order to stand up against the wall and to hold the arrow there, you have to feel discomfort. You feel discomfort long before you even attempt the element, because it's natural. And it's a prerequisite to even being able to be set up for it. And so what I really like about this, though, is, here's the deal. The quality of our lives depends on the amount of discomfort we can handle. So the quality of your life depends on the amount of discomfort you can reasonably handle. If you decide that you can't handle something, then you'll quit. That's what happens every single time. People quit more out of being uncomfortable than any other thing. Remember how we said the brain likes to protect us? It will do that. It will protect you and send you right back to your comfort zone. It will say, oh no, this is scary. This is hard. This is dangerous. This is whatever it may be. We might get rejected. We might fail. Someone might yell at us. All these things go through our mind. And our brain says, we don't want any of that. We don't want to have that happen to us. So let's just run back to our comfort zone. No discomfort. But you're not going to have a very high quality of life if you do that either. People wouldn't get married. Religious things would be out the window. All these things, we wouldn't get jobs. We wouldn't get job raises and promotions. Like none of that would happen if no one ever stepped outside of their comfort zone. We have to be able to handle a certain amount of discomfort. And how much we earn and the quality of our relationships and just our daily living depends on us being able to handle a certain amount of discomfort. Now, everybody can handle a certain amount of discomfort. Those who can't literally lock themselves in a room and never come out of it. And there have been people who have done that, and they don't let anybody talk to them. They don't talk to anybody. They don't do anything. They never leave their room. They don't experience life at all. Okay, that is an extreme example of someone's quality of life being extremely low because of the low amount of discomfort they can handle. Meanwhile, you have people who are out there like living it up, and we all watch them and we read about them and we read the things they do, and we're practically living our lives vicariously through them because it's safe. We can still read about all their experiences and get caught up in the emotion and the moments of some of it to a certain extent, right? But we're not actually living it ourselves because that would require us to get outside of our comfort zone, but we enjoy reading that someone else did it because that is so cool, right? You know what's even cooler? Doing it yourself. That's what's even cooler. Stop reading about it. Go out and do these things. Don't be hung up on the discomfort level. So this is why I like the aero brake and the rebar bending, because they're uncomfortable. And what happens is you go up to it, and then for the aero you just bust right through it and hit the wall ahead of you, right? And you focus on what you want, not on the aero, not on the discomfort. Again, life is about where you focus. If you focus on the obstacle ahead of you, it's really hard. But if you focus just beyond, so what happens is you set a piece of paper with your goal on it against the wall as well, and you put the arrow over the top of that. In order to get to your goal, you have to break through the arrow. There's no other option. You have to. You have to break through the discomfort. Most of our goals are right beyond our comfort zone. We have to break out of them in order to get the goal. Now, some people at some point in their lives just say, well, it just wasn't for me, or it's okay, I didn't really want it that bad. That's a cop-out. That's a lie. It's baloney. It's a lie you tell yourself because you feel disappointed because you didn't make it, okay? It's not real. Don't get in that habit of being that person that tells yourself you didn't really want something, or it didn't really matter, or you started it, but you found out it wasn't really for you. Why wasn't it really for you? Because it made you get outside your comfort zone. That's why. That's the only reason. You could not handle the discomfort, so you accepted a lower quality of life. Now, if that does not torque you off, I don't know what will. You are allowing the quality of your life to be determined by whether or not you can handle a little uncomfortableness. A little discomfort. That's it. How many of you have the life you want? How many of you are living the dreams that you had? Are you really going to let a little discomfort, just a little bit, stop you? Here's the thing about the aero brake and the rebar bending that I like so much. So when you first start to push, there's going to be resistance. Most of the time when we go after our goals, there's resistance. So there's going to be a little bit of resistance there. You're going to feel it. And it's going to be uncomfortable again. And the arrow's going to start to bend just a little bit. Or that rebar is going to start to bend just a little bit. And at that moment, you have a choice to either say, oh, but it's a little uncomfortable. I think I'll just back up. Or you can just smash through it at that moment and keep going, and it will break. Here's the deal. When you go through it and you hit your dream, it doesn't hurt. When you keep going and stopping and going a little bit and stopping, it starts to hurt. it starts to create more than discomfort. It actually becomes painful, and you start to lose confidence each time that you do that. We do that with our goals all the time. We start to go, and we're like, oh, I think I'll back up for just a little bit because I just can't handle this much. And then we kind of gain up our courage again. We think, I'll do it again. And we go, and then it starts to push back against us again, right? We get resistance again. I think, no. And finally, after we do that enough, we say to ourselves, this just wasn't for me. But really, it is. It is for us. There's a reason why we keep trying to do these things. It's because they're for us. If they weren't for us, they wouldn't be there. They're for us. Take them. The cool thing about the rebar is it involves another person. So you don't do the rebar by yourself. You have two people, one on each end of the rebar, and it requires both of them to put it right here and to put enough pressure against each other to hold the rebar there. And then when you go, you both have to start putting pressure in order for that rebar to bend. This is real rebar. Like rebar that you put in the roads and in the bridges. This is not a fake piece of rebar. We go to Home Depot or wherever and you buy the rebar and that's what you use, okay? It's the same rebar. And so you both have to put a certain amount of pressure. The interesting thing about this is, and kind of a cool thing for life, because we often have relationships, right? It might be with coworkers, it might be a boss and employee relationship, it might be a marriage relationship, it might be with another partner in a business or something, but we all have relationships, and relationships involve having to have that give and take, right? And you have to work together. So the rebar is amazing for that, because if one person starts out and they're just pushing and giving it all they got and the other person is not ready, you'll just start pushing them backwards, which is going to make this spot right here start to be more uncomfortable, right? And it'll work both ways. Like whichever person is pushing harder than the other person will cause a discrepancy there between the two people. And so they have to learn to actually work together. They have to give pretty close to the same amount of pressure. Now, this has nothing to do with whether or not they're the same size or the same weight or anything like that. You can have two different sized people, heights, weights, whatever, and they can still do it. But it requires them to focus and to think about the overall picture and to think about the other person too, and to meet. And then literally you do meet in the middle, right? You bend that rebar and you come together in the middle. And the interesting thing is, just like the arrow, when you first start bending it, it will give you resistance and it will start to feel uncomfortable. Very, very uncomfortable. The rebar is a little more uncomfortable than the arrow. I've now done it twice, and I can tell you each time, for a split second, I wonder if I can. Because it pushes back, literally pushes back. That still does not want to bend, right? But then when you keep going and you keep applying that pressure and you just keep steady, all of a sudden you start to see it bend, and then it becomes very fast. Once it starts to bend, it becomes immediate. The people end up meeting in the middle. That rebar bends like a knife going through butter. It just, and it's not hard. Life is often like that. Once we get past that initial whatever and we start going, once we get momentum, man, life just keeps going. Those goals just keep going. Have you ever seen someone who just seems like they succeed at everything they do and they make everything look easy? It's because they got past the discomfort and the quality of their life is amazing. And now, because they've gotten past it, everything just works in their favor. Everything just bends. Everything just moves the way it's supposed to, because they already got past the resistance. They already went there. They already had their moment, and now you're just seeing the result of their moment. So if you want to get that result, you have to have your moment too. But not just have the moment, break through the moment. Bust through it. Do it. Go after those things. And if you do it with someone else, it's even better. We're meant to do things with other people. We're meant to have relationships. This is part of having a higher quality of life. If you want to go fast, do it alone. If you want to do it better, do it with someone else. And that's kind of what the rebar teaches. It's that give and take, just that amazing relationship that makes a lot of things in life worth it. Most people don't go through life all by themselves, accomplishing all their own goals 100% by themselves. We do have goals we accomplish by ourselves, but oftentimes we have other ones that require someone else to work with us. So learn how to do that. Learn how to work with other people. So The next one I want to talk about is the one where we climb up a ladder. It's called the trust fall. So we climb up a ladder, and then we have to fall backwards on top of some other people. And this is interesting because usually when we're on ladders, we're very careful and cautious and trying not to fall off the ladder, right? And when people fall off the ladder, they break things like hips and backs and necks. And so we think to ourselves, well, we don't want to fall off the ladder. So already in your mind, you're doing the exact opposite thing of what you should be doing, right? And so that brings with a little bit of, scariness, I guess. And so you climb up there, and there's certain things you have to do, and you go over all these and the training and stuff before you step up on top of that ladder, and everyone down below has been trained on what they're supposed to do, and we make this as safe as possible, right? And you climb up on that ladder, and you realize that you're quite a bit above everyone else, and they're all sitting down there with their arms out, waiting to catch you. And you have to wonder, for a split second, it has to go through everyone's mind, what if they don't catch me? And I know some people who are larger in size sometimes worry more, because they're like, well, what if they don't catch me, right? For real. But every person has to wonder this to some extent. What if the people don't catch me? But you have to go up there and you have to give it that try. You have to trust that other people are there for you. The other people got your back. You can trust that the instructor knows what they're doing. You can trust yourself. You can trust the process. There's so many things in life where we have to trust someone else. Very seldom do we just not have to worry about trusting anybody else. Maybe if you're living in your room again and no one comes and you don't go out and you don't do anything, maybe. But even to a certain extent, you still have to trust things, right? You have to trust people to bring you your food. You have to trust they didn't do anything bad to it because you didn't just go get it yourself. You have to trust the house is going to keep working. It's not going to burn down tomorrow. I hear people say all the time, I have trust issues. And so I can't do things because I have trust issues. And I think to myself, every day, you get on the freeway in your car and you trust. Why? Why would you trust that the other cars on the road are even going to do what they're supposed to do? We trust people every single day. To say we have trust issues and so we can't do certain things because we have trust issues, again, isn't entirely true. You may have some trust issues. I'm not going to question that. But to say that those trust issues keep you from being able to reach your goals is kind of, it's not accurate, because you do trust people all the time. No one can say they don't trust anyone. I've heard people say, I don't trust anyone. That's not true. Every morning you trust that you're going to make it to work. And if you don't drive yourself, then you trust that the bus driver is going to get you there. I don't care who it is, someone you're trusting. You trust that your boss is not going to fire you that day, and that if you do your job, that you're going to still have a job there. You have to trust the other people you work with. We all have to trust people every day. Don't let the fact that you think that because you have trust issues that you can't be successful. In anything, it doesn't matter. You can't say that you don't trust anyone so you can never get married, or I don't trust anyone so I can't do blank, whatever it is that you are struggling with. Clearly, we all trust somebody every single day. It starts from the moment we are born. We trust our parents to take care of our needs. We trust that they're not going to drop us. We trust. We keep doing it throughout our lives when our parents teach us to ride our bikes. We trust. Yes, some of us may come out of life with a few issues trusting certain people, but you can't actually say that you have a complete trust issue, because we all still go on trusting other people. You may not trust a particular person. There may be a reason for that. But you can't just say that you don't trust anybody. Or I don't trust any male. Again, do you go out on the street? Are there not males on the street? Do you cross the road? Do you trust that none of those males are going to run you over? Or I don't trust females. Do you ever get on a bus with a female? Like, all these things. The pilot on the airplane. I mean, you can't say that you don't trust other people. We trust other people every single day. No one has a true trust issue that keeps them from doing something. Unless, again, maybe if you're sitting in your room and you're not going anywhere, like I said, even then you still have to trust that someone's going to bring you your food. So to a certain extent, everyone trusts the end, right? We all have to trust somebody. You can't have a trust issue that's keeping you from being able to be successful because you don't trust anyone. If you're using that, it's a limiting belief. It's a mindset issue. Probably ought to start working on that a little bit because it's not true. It's a lie we tell ourselves, again, to protect ourselves. Like, I'm not doing this because I don't trust anyone. Okay. Well, that's not true. You do trust people all the time. The quality of our life will depend on the amount of discomfort we can handle. Okay. So, that's kind of all I'm going to say about the trust fall. But I love that. I love that event too. And I have a fear of falling. And so it was interesting for me to do it and to trust that people were going to catch me down below. But I figured if I can drive every day on the freeway, then with complete strangers, then all these people I've been getting to know all week, surely I can trust that they're not going to let me fall and die, right? The next one that I actually want to talk about is the fire walk. This is interesting because I think this makes people question even more why you would do something. And this has more myths about it than probably any of the other elements. And we do. We kind of wonder, like, why would anyone want to firewalk? That just seems weird. We don't want to get burned. We've been learning since we were 2 years old, don't touch the stove. It's hot. You'll get burned. And then they say, go ahead and firewalk, right? And so when we say firewalk, we're not talking about literally walking on flames. What we're talking about is you take some wood, you burn it until it's coals, and then you spread those coals out, and then you walk over the top of them. And different people say there's different reasons why you can do this, and a lot of those myths have been debunked. The firewalk is unique from the other elements in that while all the elements require a certain level of discomfort and all the elements require overcoming a limiting belief in some way and breaking through a barrier in some way, the firewalk is more mental than physical. Whereas some of the other events, are definitely equally physical, mental. I mean, right? There's logic behind them. There's scientific evidence behind them. The firewalk is a little bit different. There is some science still behind it. Things for why it's even possible, right? Why you don't burn all the flesh off the bottom of your feet. But there's also parts of that don't make sense. That have to do with our mental state. And so that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit here. So the firewalk, first of all, you have to understand when I first did it, I had researched all this stuff on the internet. I thought to myself, oh, this is why they can do it. This makes sense. Like, this is logical. And then I get there and I remember saying, well, where's the water? And they're like, what do you mean, where's the water? And I said, well, we're supposed to dip our feet in the water first. So when we walk, then there's like, and I was like, because I'd read on the internet about all these theories that make it so you can walk on water or walk on fire. And water was one of them. They said then, your feet don't actually like touch and it's burning off the water. And they're like, we don't use water. And I was like, oh, like instant fear, right? Like that was one of the logical things that they told me was part of it. And then they got to, I was like looking at him like, hey, he didn't spread any ashes out over the top of it. And they're like, what are you talking about? Like some of these people had already firewalked before. They're looking at me like I have lost it. And they're like, what do you mean ashes? And I said, well, you're supposed to put some ashes over the top so you're not actually walking right on top of all the coals. Like, it won't be as hot. I'm like, no, you don't put ashes on top. And there went another theory that I'd heard that made it safe, right? And so now I'm like sitting here with nothing left anymore for why this should be safe. And yet they're telling me that I'm going to walk across it and I'm not going to burn the bottoms of my feet off. And I'm looking at the coals and they are red. Okay, this is not coals that have been sitting for hours and have now lost half their heat. These are coals that are smoking and are red. And so I'm like watching them like glow and thinking, you just debunked all of the myths that I was believing in, and we're not doing any of those, and you're telling me we're still going to walk across these red coals. And what I learned, so I'm going to talk about a couple things here, is that the coal walking involves heavily on your ability to control and manage your state. So what do I mean by that? So I mean it depends on your ability to control your emotional state, your mental state. It requires you to control your thoughts, your energy levels, and all these things. You see, we live in a world where people say, so-and-so made me mad. So-and-so made me sad. So-and-so did this. And as a result, I did this. We like to believe that our lives, that we have to react. We can't control it. so-and-so does this and it leads to this. A causes B. B causes C. And we can go down the line all day long and explain why we have no control. I punched the person because they made me mad. They made fun of me, so I punched them. What we're really saying is I have no self-control. I am only a person who can react. I have no ability to act. That's a lie. It's a lie we tell ourselves. We always have the ability to act instead of react. People who learn to act will always be more successful than people who only react to everything they do. Which one are you? Are you an actor or are you a reactor? So firewalking brings that out really fast, because what happens is no matter what you're feeling when you step up to that fire, it can be, if you're feeling fear, that is not how you want to walk across that fire, fearing, right? If you're focusing on getting burned, what's going to happen? We know that we get what we focus on, not what we want. It doesn't matter what you want in life. You will not get it unless you're focusing on what you want. If you're focusing on the fact that it's going to be hard, or the fact that no one's ever succeeded at this before, or the fact that you've tried before and failed, if you're focusing on all the bad parts of it, you're going to bring those things into your life, and that's going to be the result you get. You do not get what you want in life. You get what you focus on. Say that to yourself 100 times. I get what I focus on, not what I want. So if you want something, then you better be focusing on that. Not focusing on all the negative aspects, not focusing on the problems, not focusing on the obstacles. Focus on what you want. So when you step up there, you don't want to be focusing on the fear. You don't want to be focusing on the burns that you could receive or the blisters you're going to have on your feet afterwards. You want to focus on it being great and everything working the way you want. And as a result of being able to focus on whatever it is that you want, you have the ability to change your energy levels just like that. Okay, when I said that you're not stuck being mad. So a person can lose their job, right? And they can go home and they can be sad and mad and cry for a week and do nothing productive whatsoever, because all they do is think about how they lost their job all week. And another person can lose their job and they go home and say, this is a great opportunity. I now have the ability to apply for any job I want to. This is kind of exciting. It's an adventure. There's two very different energies involved in that. One of them caused the person to almost not even be able to function at all. The other person chose to have so much energy they were ready to go out there and take on the world, right? That's what the fire teaches. In order to walk across that fire and not get burned, you have to learn to control your state. That was probably the most important lesson I learned by doing these things, is that I am 100% in control and that I can change my state of mind in a second. I am not stuck being sad because something sad happened. I am not stuck being mad because someone did something that I didn't like. I'm not stuck anywhere, and neither are you. None of us are stuck in our current situations. We can change them. You have to change them to walk on the fire. You have to change them to be successful. You have to change them to avoid having more problems in the future. It is just like that in life. You have to be able to change your energy, your state of mind, your thinking, your focus, whatever it is. If you learn to control that, you can do anything. And I mean literally anything. If you cannot learn to control your emotions and your mental state, you're going to have a really rough life. It's going to lead to a life of reacting constantly and not ever getting what you want. So that's what the fire taught me. That is one reason why I would say that every single person should walk on fire, should do a fire walk. Because it teaches you how. It doesn't matter what happened. You could have just looked at a text and it could have said that your dad died. But if you're going to walk on that fire, you cannot walk on that fire depressed thinking about the fact that your dad died. You have to be able to, in a split second, change your energy level. You have to have high energy to walk on the fire. The energy of your body will affect different things in your body and will affect how productive and how easily you can walk across that fire. It will affect the success of your walk, which is interesting. There is some science behind the fire walk, but some of it isn't science. Some of it's the other realm of things that we often don't like to think about, that we want to have all the answers and we want everything to be logical and to make sense. But sometimes life doesn't do that. Sometimes things don't make sense. There are things that we cannot explain in life. God is one of them. We don't get to see him. People don't, we can't just explain it. Things don't just make sense. There's things we cannot understand in this life, but yet they're real. And if we don't learn how to manage those things and how to use those things, then life is a lot harder. So you can't just rely on science for the firewalk. That's why I love it so much. You have to rely on your ability to change your state, on your ability to have the right emotions, on your ability to have the right energy. And if you can do that, you can walk on fire and you won't get burned. I remember when I came home in August, my husband said to me, I want to see your feet. And he looked at me and goes, well, where's the blisters at? I said, what blisters? What are you talking about? And he said, I don't get it. You walked on fire all week long and you don't have any blisters. And one of those was 108 firewalks. We walked 108 firewalks, okay? That's a pretty big deal. Well, I thought that was a big deal. And then, this last time I went, we did a 40-foot firewalk, which puts you on the coals even further, which takes out some of the theories even more that people have, that you're not on them long enough to really get your feet hot enough. Well, on a 40-foot firewalk, you're on them long enough to definitely have feet that could get plenty hot. But then, one of the days, we did something that blew my mind even more. I knew this was coming because he talked about it when I'd been there in August. So I knew in November that this was coming. And that is we stood on the fire. We didn't move our feet. We didn't do anything. We literally learned how to manage our state. We talked about it. We'd been practicing it. And we were told you have to be able to not just get to a certain state. You have to be able to hold that state for a long period of time, which for a lot of us is hard. Like we can hold state for, 4 seconds or 8 seconds or be really excited for just a minute to bust through that brick. But what about standing on fire for a couple minutes? But that's what we did. We spread out the coals, we stepped onto them, and we stood there for 2 or 3 minutes, just standing there. And of course, every now and then you'd feel a spot that didn't feel very comfortable. And so you just slightly adjust your foot just a little bit, so that you'd be fine again, right? Busted through every myth I had about firewalking. None of it made any sense. All the theories that they say, I suddenly realized that my life was in my own hands. Firewalking taught me that I have complete control over my emotional state. I have complete control over how I feel, how I think, and as a result, how I feel and how I think determines what I do. And so I have complete control over every action I can take every single day. Do you have any idea how empowering that is? And that, my friends, is why you should firewalk. Why you should do these elements. Not because you need to do them, to prove something, or because you're an adrenaline junkie and so this is going to just wipe out all that, but because of the lessons you'll learn, the life lessons that you can then take to make it so you can be successful in your real life. The thing is, in order to be successful doing these elements, you have to learn them really fast, and you have to be able to apply them in a second. You don't have months to think about it or to debate it. You have 25 seconds to overcome some of these things, 25 seconds to get into state, 25 seconds to bust through the discomfort, 25 seconds to prepare yourself to bust through a brick. You don't have all day. You don't get to think about it forever. It teaches you to take things in the moment. And that is why it's worth doing these kinds of things. Anyway, I had a great time. And, I've been working on doing some of these events myself, trainings and things. And hopefully some of you will be interested in some of this. You'll see the value in doing these things, and you'll want to do things similarly to this. And take advantage. Seize these opportunities. I mean, you now know someone who can do these kinds of things with you. Take advantage of them for different things. It can be for personal reasons. It can be, for health reasons. It can be for emotional reasons. Therapy things, coaching things can use these kinds of things. Health things, business trainings, all these things. They make better leaders. There's just a whole array of things that can be accomplished to this. Things that'll make your life better. Because if you can walk on fire, there's very little scientific reason for why you should, then you can do whatever it is that's been holding you back in life. If you can bust through that arrow and that discomfort, then you can do whatever it is that you've been trying to convince yourself you don't really want to do, or is really not that important to you. You can go back and pick that back up and say, yes, I'm going to do it, and do it. You're awesome. You have great things in store for you. I hope you'll take advantage of those great things. Thanks for listening, and remember to make it a great day.